Hi friends, we are back again with the mechanics of writing. In this particular session, we will be seeing how a quotation can be given from a piece of poetry, prose or any written text. The use of ellipses and interpolations are going to be dealt with in this particular session. Quotations. All quotations, whether a word, phrase, sentence, paragraph or more should correspond exactly to the original source in spelling, capitalization and interior punctuation. There should not be any deviation from the original text in any of these particular factors: spelling, capitalization and interior punctuation. Exceptions such as the italicization of words for emphasis or the modernization of spelling must be explicitly indicated or explained in a note or enclosed in parentheses at the end of the quotation or in square brackets within the quotation. So if you're going to do any modification, it has to be mentioned, it has to be given over there that it has been done for the sake of emphasis. For example, Lincoln specifically advocated a government for the people. The word for has been italicized for emphasis, for added emphasis. In poetry, quotations of 2 or 3 lines may be placed in the text within quotation marks, but with the lines separated by a slash with a space in each side of the slash. In Shakespeare's Julius Caesar, Antony says to Brutus, "This was the noblest Roman of them all." In Julius Caesar, Antony begins his famous speech, "Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears." Semicolon. You have a space, a slash, a place, and then you have, "I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him." Verse quotations of more than 3 lines should be separated from the text by triple spacing, introduced in most cases by a colon indented 0.5 inches from the left margin and tied with double spacing, but without quotation marks unless they appear in the original. So you're not going to use any quotation marks unless and until it comes in the original. If the lines are less than 3, you're just going to use quotation marks. But when the lines are more than 3 lines, you have to use the triple spacing and the indentation of 0.5 inches along with the dots. The spatial arrangement of the original, including indentation and spacing within and between lines, should be produced as accurately as possible. So you should not deviate from the pattern that has been given in the text by the poet. Crashaw begins his poem, "The Weeper," with several metaphors describing the eyes of Saint Mary Magdalene, withholding until the end of the first stanza, subject of his work. Here you have the verses from the poetry. Hail, Sister Springs. So you can note that all the verses, since they are more than 3 lines, they have been indented to 0.5 spacing. If the quotation begins in the middle of the line of verse, it should be reproduced as such and not shifted to the left margin. That you can see in the example that follows. It is in Act 3 of As You Like It that Jacques is given the speech that many think contains a glimpse of Shakespeare's conception of drama. So since the line that starts in the original text is from the middle of the page, the same is followed in this particular quotation also. All the world's a stage. It is not aligned or shifted to the left margin, but it starts from the middle, because that is from the where the researcher wants to quote the text. And all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances. And one man in his time plays many parts, his acts being 7 ages. Next, we are coming to the quoting of prose from texts. Prose quotations of not more than 4 lines in the typescript should always be incorporated within quotation marks as part of the text. So, when we were talking about poetry, we said it has to be 2 or 3 lines. And when we have a poetry which we are going to quote, which has more than 3 lines, you're going to give a 0.5 indentation. But here, in prose, we see that when it is not more than 4 lines, you're going to put it within quotation marks. For example, here you have, for Dickens, it was both the best of times and the worst of times. So the words that have been quoted are within the quotation marks. He was obeyed, writes Conrad, of the company manager in Heart of Darkness. Yet, he inspired neither love nor fear nor even respect. So, the quoted item is always within the quotation marks, and it is in a continuous pattern along with the comments of the writer, of the researcher. Longer quotations. Now we are coming to the next portion. That is a longer quotations, more than 5 lines in the typescript, are usually introduced by a colon or comma. Set off from the text by triple spacing, indented 0.5 inches from the left margin and typed with double spacing but without quotation marks. So you have to have this in your mind that you are not supposed to use double quotations when you're going to give a longer quotation which is more than 4 lines. If a single paragraph or part of one is quoted, do not indent the first line more than the body of the quotation. If 2 or more paragraphs are quoted, consequently, as in the following example, we are going to see the example in the next slide. Indent the first line of each an additional 0.2 inches. If, however, the first sentence quoted is not the beginning of the paragraph in the source, do not indent it the additional 0.2 inches. So when you see this example, you can understand it clearly. In Malfander's Defoe maintains the pseudo-autobiographical narration typical of the picturesque tradition. You have a colon and we have the introduction of the quotation. When you see that we are quoting from consecutive paragraphs, that is a quotation from 2 paragraphs. The second paragraph has been indented 0.2 points more than what we are seeing in the first paragraph. This is what you have to note and follow in your particular text. Ellipsis. When omitting a word, a phrase, a sentence or paragraph from a quoted passage, writers should be guided by 2 principles. Fairness to the author being quoted and clarity and correct grammar in their meeting. Okay, in their omitting. If only a fragment of a sentence is quoted, it will be obvious that some of the original sentence has been left out. So in that place, wherever you're leaving some text, that time we are using an ellipsis, which is a combination of 3 dots. Okay. If material from the original has been omitted, the omission or omissions should be indicated by using an ellipsis. Ellipsis is 3 dots.